Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Board Game Buffet podcast, episode number 90. My name is Dean.
This is Graham.
90, Graham. Oh, 100's within reach.
It is.
It's, I don't know if it's a milestone or not when you hit 100, but it'll certainly feel like one.
Yeah, and it's, I've done two podcasts. This is the third podcast I'm a part of. My first two podcasts only made it to 80. So this feels like I'm out in no man's land now. I've never been this far out.
Finally, somebody likes you enough to stick around past 80. Well, we'll see if it goes past 100. I'm not sure yet. I have to send you your end of the year evaluation. See how you do. The metrics are getting a little tougher this year.
Yeah, could improve in these situations.
Right. I mean, you spend all the money on your fancy lighting and your fancy microphones, but is your heart really in it? That's what's important. I mean, you think just once you would wear one of those Board Game Buffet shirts onto the podcast.
Now that I'm doing video, I really should. I have one of them upstairs that I have not worn for the podcast. I wore them when we used to record it on audio. As soon as it goes video, I don't wear them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even wear them on your reviews for the Dice Tower. I mean, what's the point? If I'm not, if you're not going to give us free advertising
on our own show,
I really sense you're beginning to question your dedication.
Well, we're only at 90, so I just want to see whether this thing actually takes off or not.
Okay, yeah, check back in at episode 150, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, 6 years down the road, I don't know. Not sure if we have what it takes anymore. Not that we ever had what it took, but so what's happening up in your neck of the woods? Anything?
We're under lockdown right now. Stay-at-home orders until the end of May.
I could probably just make a clip of that and insert that into every episode because I think you've been saying that for quite some time now.
Yeah. Although we were released about 2-3 months. My regional was released like in middle of February. But then we clamped back down at the end of March, early April. So we shall see. We are tentatively planning to go up to our place up in Collingwood in the summer. It's like an hour and a half north of us. So it's not like I'm going on big exotic locations. But even then, we're like, okay, we will tentatively plan, but nothing's for certain yet. And that's not until the end of July.
Yeah, well, I was supposed to get my second shot tomorrow. It's now been postponed because I'm still out of town and they wouldn't let me go home to get it until next week. And I actually just came off of my own little 10-day quarantine that they put me in because I had symptoms of an upset stomach and sneezing. So I was banished to my hotel room for 10 days, which, I mean, I would say it was fine, but I will say I think I was only in here for 9 days, not counting the first day that I was already sick. That's a long time to not leave your little hotel room and just look out the window at at people passing by. So I don't think I could do it for a super long time. But I didn't have anything. I just had symptoms. So they were being overly cautious, which I get. I mean, makes sense.
Yeah.
But I was very excited when I got to leave my room this morning and actually go back and mingle with coworkers.
Yeah, you ran up and down the street. Well, you ran around the parking lot and stopped halfway for a breather.
Well, I walked briskly to my vehicle so I could get there just late enough where they didn't really care.
Yeah.
So for work, I don't like to be, if I'm going into an office building, I'm not one of those people that gets there like 20 minutes early to fire up their computer and be ready to go at the, strike of the top of the hour. No, I don't get paid until 7 a.m. That's when I shall arrive.
I always liked arriving. Well, if my day started at 7, if my office day started at 7, I'd be in there for 7. But when I was going to the office, my day would start at 9. I would go in early just to avoid the traffic.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. So other than that, I really haven't had a whole lot going on. Work, played a couple of solo games, played some war games with you on Vassal, and that's pretty much been it. I think I bought one game on the aftermarket from somebody the other day. Haven't really seen a whole lot coming out from new releases to make me pull the trigger on anything. So my wife's probably wondering what happened to me. No boxes have been showing up for the 4 weeks I've been gone.
So that's a question. I heard other people talking about the release schedule from last year into this year. And, we always, I don't know whether we complain, but, we quite often do an Essen list. You and I kind of go through the Essen things
Hmm.
and we kind of look at things that are exciting to us. And there seems to be, well, there used to be kind of regular con releases. So around Gen Con, you get a whole bunch of games that came out. Around Essen, a whole bunch of games came out. And then, February, March, April was usually kind of a downtime. Now that they've kind of spread it out, so you're not getting 5 new games all at the same time, but you may be getting one every other week. Do you prefer that type of release schedule, or would you prefer to have 10 games release at the 1st of March, and then you get to pick which one you want, as opposed to having to wait for, I don't like this week's one, I'll wait for 2 weeks for another new game to come out.
Um, I mean, I don't know if I really care, but I don't mind them coming out in little clusters because yeah, it may cost you more money if you are, if you're going to buy all of them at one time. But then from the shipping standpoint, it's nice to be able to, kind of get the games that you actually want and not have to fill in the order with a possible, yeah, I'll try it sort of game just to get the free shipping. But
See,
I mean, on that, I don't really care. I mean, yeah, whatever.
for me, I actually prefer the lump dump, um, because shipping for us, if you're just going to buy one game, shipping's not free.
Right.
But the stores are close enough to me that I can always go and pick it up myself. But it's like, well, I'm really going to drive there just for one game? I'd
Hmm.
rather order 3 or 4 games, which will definitely give me the free shipping, or I could go pick them up. But then picking 3 or 4 games up is better than picking one game up. So when a game comes out, I kind of look at it and think, well, I'll wait for a couple more games to come out and like build up my order and then place the order. So having the lump dump kind of gives me that perfect time to do it. I just, okay, let's see the 5 games that came out this week and I want 3 of them and I'll just order them.
Yeah. I think again, I mean, I don't really care. To me, it just if I like the game, I'll end up buying the game. It does make it easier when they all come out at one time. But I think it used to be Origins would have some new releases, and primarily it was Gen Con and Essen, and it seemed like the spring, February, March, April, that was when all the Kickstarters seemed to or were supposed to be delivered. So it always seemed like the springtime was Kickstarters. Now, I don't know. I mean, if they're on time, I mean, I guess that's a miracle. Most of them aren't. But it could just be because without conventions happening, that maybe I'm just not paying as much attention to new releases as well. I mean, I can't. I mean, I have a wish list on cool stuff, and I have a wish list on BGG. But of those, if I actually went through them, I'm not sure how many of them are actually games that are like slated to come out anytime soon.
Right.
Some of them might be games that are may never come out. They've been on my list for a couple of years. Some of them could just be older games that hey, I want to go back and pick up. So I don't. I mean, I'm not sure how many actual games there are that are viable to where I'm going to be able to get them this year, anyways. As far as with the production schedule, I would think by now most production schedules are probably pretty normal in China if that's where they're printing.
Yeah. So actually, you brought up another question as we were talking about wish lists. So you've got games on your wish list that aren't coming out yet. I see. I never bother with wish lists.
That's
Um,
sad. What kind of childhood did you have?
well, I had a wish list when I was a kid for Christmas, but I mean, as an adult, I thought I've grown out of that. But in terms of, I don't know, the idea that you don't want to miss a game, but do you think that if a game is that good that you are going to miss it? Like, do you really need to remind yourself to look out for this whatever game it is? Because
Well,
I figure if I think about it now, if I remember it in 6 months when it actually releases, I'll pick it up. But if I miss the release of it, or I see it in the hot new releases on my local game store, and it doesn't spark a bell in my head, I'm thinking, well, then did I really want it that bad when I first saw it?
yeah, I'm not sure how many of the games on my wish list are future games, I'd say there's more likely to be more that are older games or just some weird games that I've come across looking at, making different top 10 lists or whatever that I didn't even know existed. Or maybe I'm looking at a theme for, historical theme for something like, oh, I didn't even know there was a game on this subject matter. So I'll just click it, as a wish list thing so that later on I go back and it kind of jogs my memory. I mean, I probably still will never end up getting them because, if they're older and they're out of print, I mean, then I'm, stuck on the aftermarket. But there's quite a few games that, I've marked that I'm not like dying to get them, and I don't change. Like everything for me is a one for the wish list on BGG. I don't change it to like, because you can go 1 through 5 or something like that for different levels of how much you really want it. I don't do that. I pretty much just mark everything a one. It's more of a, I guess it's just more of an idea to jog my memory that, hey, I'm interested. Or if I see it for sale or in an auction or in a trade or something, and I'm like, that sounds familiar, and I click on it and I see that I marked it at some point in time, it might make me a little more interested. I mean, you're young, you have a great memory. I'm decrepit, apparently,
That is
according
true.
to my kids.
Old as dirt.
Yeah. I guess the saying would be old as Lella after this, right?
I'll let her know that you said that.
That's right.
Um,
No, tell her that was B who said that, not me.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that if I figure if a game is memorable enough for me to remember it, then when I see it hit the shelves, I will pick it up. And you and I have done Essen lists, and in 6 months' time, you'll say, "Oh, such and such a game came out," and I'm like, "What game was that?"
Right.
So obviously I was intrigued enough to put on my list the first time, but not, it wasn't this is the game I have to buy when it comes out.
Yeah, but how many of those games exist for you anyways? Not many. I mean, a game doesn't become memorable to you or stick in your mind until you've played it, probably.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some games I was looking forward to, like Bonfire, or if I know what the next Feld game is, I'll definitely keep an eye out for that,
Right.
or even a Rosenberg game. Um, but yeah, if it's a smaller game, or if it's a Fister game, I'll keep an eye out for it. But I think those are easier to see because you know the name. Like it's like, oh, this is the Feld game I haven't seen before. This it's the new one. For smaller games that kind of tweaked my interest doing the Essen list or going through Gen Con stuff or whatever else, I don't. You're right. It's really not until I play it, unless see, I would hope that if I was swayed enough by the description or what they posted about the game, that I would remember that. And I find most of the time I don't.
Yeah, I mean, and I think because we look at so many different games, it's hard to keep them all straight. I mean, there are numerous times where I'll be in a store and I'm like, don't I do I own this game already? I think I own this game. I have to get out my phone, I have to look like, oh no, I don't. I just played it or I just must have seen it on the list. So for me, that's hard to just keep that stuff in line. I mean, think about Fister. I had no idea that Cloud Age was even coming out. I really didn't even know Bonfire was coming out for Feld. I don't spend that much time looking at a specific designer and looking what their future releases are going to be. I just happen to see them on social media or see this game's now available on this website, and that's kind of what prompts me. So I kind of need the list just to, I guess, I'd say to keep me spending money, but I don't. I don't even know if it's as much about buying the games as it's fun to put them on a list and then think, oh, someday I'm going to track this game down. It's like when I used to collect comics. I used to travel the country with just like legal pads of comics I needed to fill out certain runs. I could have got online and bought them, but I wanted to be able to search for them. And if I find them, that was great. And I kind of that the same way with games where if I can find them for a cheap price at an auction, that's as much of a thrill for me as, you know, buying the game and playing it.
But it also goes into the idea of how soon a reviewer reviews a game. Like how far in advance is it what's the prime distance between you hearing about a game and seeing it on the shelf? For example, you and I played the Lacerda game, the
Uh,
Mercator
De
de Lisboa.
Lisboa.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we played that and we talked about it like 8 months ago. So if people heard our review of it back then or were intrigued by it, but then it doesn't show up on the shelves for another 8 months or whatever it is, wasn't worth us talking about it 8 months ago. Unless there are people like you who make a wish list saying, "Oh, that sounds interesting. I'll keep an eye open for it." I watch other reviewers and it's like, "Oh, I'm really interested in this game," but then it doesn't come out for 6 months. And then when it does come out, I'm like, "Wait, what's this game again?" Because there was such a gap between me learning about it and the time it actually comes out. Unless it's a game I was absolutely fascinated by and had to try it, by the time it comes out, I've forgotten about it.
But it doesn't mean you still don't want to play it, right?
Um, right. It doesn't mean that I don't want to play it anymore.
I
But
mean, do you approach it as, well, if I knew about it 6 months ago and now I don't know about it or I don't remember it, I'm not even going to buy it now because obviously it must be garbage.
again, because I'm buying them to review, if I've seen a couple of reviews on it that were done 6 months ago and it hits the shelves now, I probably wouldn't pick it up because I know people have already done reviews of it. And again, because it hasn't stuck in my head as I need to buy this game when it comes out, it's just oh yeah, I remember, Dean talking about this game. I remember whomever talking about this game. I'm probably not going to buy it because I've forgotten about it and someone has already done a review on it.
But wouldn't you be, I mean, okay, so I get it from the reviewing standpoint, but take reviewing out of it, wouldn't you be better served buying a game that you were once interested in and now maybe you don't remember being interested in it as much, but it kind of vaguely rings a bell versus buying a game like, say, Zorro Dice that you'd never heard of, but because you never heard of it, you were excited about it, and it's utter garbage.
Yes, but how many unplayed games do you own through
Two,
your wish lists?
two unplayed games do I own through my wish list?
Yeah.
Unplayed games that I own through my wish list. I don't know.
See,
Two or three, maybe tops.
the ideal thing for me would be if I heard about a game and it intrigued me so much that I remember when it came out 6 months later, that I would pick it up. Like if I was not reviewing, if I just wanted to keep my collection at say 100 games or whatever that magic number for anybody is, I'd want to make sure that the games that are in my collection are the ones I wanted most. And the ones I wanted most are the ones I'm going to remember. If I need to write it down or put it in a wish list for someone to remind me to say, "Oh, by the way, you were once interested in this for half an hour," I'm not sure whether that should warrant a purchase.
I think you set some very um, arbitrary rules upon yourself as to what you're allowed to do and not do
No,
in your hobby.
I'm all I mean is if I wanted to keep my collection down and if I wanted to make sure that my collection is kind of the best of the best, games that you saw that you were excited about that you've forgotten are probably not going to be the best for you. So is
Which,
it worth buying those?
yes, because you only forgot about them because you haven't played them. I mean, that's like saying, well, I heard about this really great restaurant. Oh, we didn't go to it in, the first 6 months. I kind of forgot about it. Does that mean you're never going to want to try that restaurant? Because I mean, you did hear good things about it. You were excited about it at one time, but maybe driving past it, like, oh yeah, we were going to go there. For me, a game. I mean, if that's the case, then what you're saying is that once your collection gets to 200, you're done. You don't need to play any more games because that's your collection. And if you're not super excited about the game, you're not going to play it to try it. You never know. You might be a hidden gem that or a known gem that people are talking about that you're not going to try because you're not all razzed up about it.
But again, that comes back to my other comment about the time in between when you hear about it and when the time you can actually buy it. So if I was excited by a game last week and I see it hit my stores this week, there's probably a high chance I'm going to buy it.
Well, sure.
But if I was excited about a game 6 months ago and it's just arriving on my things now and I've had time to forget about it, the likelihood for me that I would buy it would go down. Like I
Oh,
want to
yeah,
feel, I
yeah.
want to have the excitement. And for me, if that excitement hasn't been maintained between the time I hear about it to the time I see it on the shelves, and that is due to time in between, or maybe my excitement was like a peak and it's really petered off because maybe I heard more about it or whatever. So that's why it's kind of a double fold thing for me, that I want to know about the games, but if I have to wait too long, unless I'm really, really intrigued, then my wanting to purchase it decreases over time.
Well, what you need is you need to then increase your FOMO so that you buy it before it goes out of print and out of stock. Because then you're really going to be sad. You're going to have a super duper wish list that you can't get anymore. But you should, it's like when I go to the grocery store sometimes, or if I go to, say, Target, I'll put stuff in my basket. And
Mhm.
then by the time I leave an hour later, I've put half of it back on the shelves as I've gone past.
Yep.
Because I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. That's stupid. I don't need a new belt. That twine will last forever. I can still keep doing it that way. I do the same thing at the grocery store, and maybe I should do that at conventions. But then at conventions, I'm like, well, then they might sell out by the time if I make another loop around the vendor hall, they could be out of it by the time I get back. So I should just buy it now. They're not going to run out of stuff at the grocery store, at least. Yeah, it's maybe toilet paper, a year ago, but other than that, yeah, I don't know. I just don't. If I'm excited about a game, I'll put it on the wish list. Doesn't mean stuff doesn't get taken off the wish list. I take stuff off my wish list with cool stuff all the time. Um,
But again,
and
so
so, and
what?
I'll put stuff in my cart and leave it there. And then sometimes I'll go back and be like, yeah, now that I know more about the game, I'll remove it. Or, maybe I wasn't as excited as I was. I mean, it's not etched in stone that it's going to stay on the wish list forever.
So what you just described is exactly what I'm saying about and
No,
the longer time that that stuff stays on your wish list, the more critical you become of it.
I agree,
Yeah.
but that doesn't stop me from making a wish list. You just don't make a wish list because someone stole your soul as a child and you're afraid of disappointment. I guess I'm not
Listen,
sure.
I sold it.
you well, that I can believe. You probably sold it for a pack of magic cards and a uh, a piggy bank.
Yeah, it's just I find I don't know. I think it's also because of where we are in the hobby. I know when I first got in, like the first year or two that I was in the hobby, I had the same thing. I didn't use tools, but I
Hmm.
had a text document that was all the games I wanted to buy that I heard about.
Right.
And I would check my local game store every time I went in, and I'd have a list of like 50 games that I wanted to buy. And then over time, I got away from doing that. And now to the point when if I miss it, I miss it.
All right.
If I'm excited about it, I want to be able to buy it relatively soon. If the gap is too long, unless someone comes out and does not exactly a re-review, but you quite often find that when companies want to hype up a game, they'll send out to all the reviewers, and all the reviews come out at the same time. But then if it gets delayed by 6 months, no one's going to be doing a re-review closer to it to make sure that people's hype gets back up.
Right.
When the hype hits, you need to be able to buy it. And
Yeah.
it's the diminishing of that hype that time you get to look at it and say, well, maybe it's not as good as I thought. Let me look a little more into it. Well, if you get hyped up like the at cons, it's like they're going to hype you up over a game, and then they're going to go, oh, here's the game you could buy. Take it out to the guy and give him the money. And you're like, hey, yeah, I
Yeah.
want to do this. Next day, you're kind of looking at it going, why the hell did I buy
Yeah.
this?
It'll be, you demo the game and they're like, well, let me see if we have any more copies. I don't know. They've been flying. We've got two. Okay. Yeah. We've got two left. Do you want one of these? And then they open up a brand new case and put two more out after you leave. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I understand. I think that's why there are embargoes that publishers put out for reviews, and I think 30 days. If you can get the reviews aired 30 days within it hitting the shelves, I think that's perfect. I don't know how well they can control that though. I mean, sometimes there's just a delay,
Yeah.
but I also think you run you know, I've seen it happen with many games where because of stock, Star Wars Destiny dice was one. Um, pick it, pick whichever one you want. But Fantasy Flight has a very bad record of releasing stuff, but then it sells out so quickly, and then it takes another 6 months to get fresh stock in of the base game or the first, the first expansion series of dice. So by the time it happens, especially for a lot of those with tournament play or organized play, people aren't going back. I mean, 6 months is a long time. And it amazes me that a company like Fantasy Flight constantly has those issues. I mean, you would think by now you kind of know what your dedicated fan base is probably going to buy based
Yeah.
off of an IP. And I mean, yeah, I guess it's fiscally responsible, but I would have to think that they lose some money by not being able to get the product into people's hands.
Yeah, and that's a tough call because I think they got burned with the expansions. When like Eldritch Horror came out, or a lot of the other stuff that they did several years ago, it was like, oh yeah, here's the base game, and you buy it next week. Here's expansion number one, and we're going to release an expansion every week for the next 6 months, and you have to buy them all at $30. And people kind of went, wait on, like, hold on, let me just play the base game. And then when stuff like Mansions of Madness Second Edition came out, or Lord of the Rings, we had finished that campaign in Lord of the Rings, the Journeys into Middle Earth, before the first expansion came out.
Right.
And we played that, let's say over 2-3 months. Then it was like, okay, now we're waiting for the expansion and we're excited about the expansion. If they said, here's Lord of the Rings, Journey into Middle Earth, and next month, here's the next 5 expansions for it. Well, it's kind of like, well, let me finish the base game first. And do I really want to go back and buy the other 5? But it kind of got me, the way they did it for the newer games, it kind of gets you more salivating for the next thing, because you really enjoyed the base game. Now I looked forward to what the next thing was going to be put out, and I actually didn't mind having to wait a little bit to get the next thing.
Yeah, I think the Lord of the Rings game, the Journeys into Middle Earth, I think they walked a very fine line with that, because there's only been one real expansion for it. The other one was like I don't know, some minis or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there's been the base game and there's been that one expansion. And the base game came out what, 2020?
I want to say 2019.
Beginning of yeah, so whatever it was. So for them to only have the one expansion, it's nice from a consumer standpoint that I don't have to rush out and keep buying stuff. But at the same time, it's hard if you're only getting one expansion in a year to keep that momentum that, well, we played through it, and now what's going to be another year for the next one? I mean, am I still going to be wanting to play the next one in a year? I mean,
so you're right. You
I don't
kind of
know.
have to strike the perfect balance. And I don't know who can predict what's going to be hot, how long people are going to be playing for it, when should the next expansion come out. I just find that the stuff that they did before I felt was too much. And honestly,
Right.
for Lord of the Rings, I felt it was too little. I think they should have had, here's the base game. It's going to take an average person, an average group, let's say 12, 15 plays to get through it. So if you play it over 3-4 months, then we should be releasing the next one 5 to 6 months after the first one.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe with Lord of the Rings, because I know for Mansions of Madness, there's actually downloadable content that you can buy through the app.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Lord of the Rings does the same thing. I mean, that may be something that with that one, I enjoy the game. I like the theme of Mansions of Madness better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm glad they did what they did with Lord of the Rings, because I'm not even through the base game yet. But yeah. How did we get started on this topic? Hell, I don't remember.
Yeah. We got to start talking about board games or something.
Yeah. I mean, this podcast is not about board games. It's about weather and insolent children that need to be punished. So, all right. Well, we should probably move on to our first bite segment. As always, I'm sure Graham has 2 games and I have 1, because he's better than me. He's the real gamer. Oh, let me go back to the prior point real quick. I will say this. So having been out of purchasing new war games for quite some time, I mean, other than, maybe some card driven games, and then getting back into buying new stuff for war games, that has been probably where I've spent the most amount of money in the last year. So what you should do is get out of Euro gaming, focus primarily on abstracts. And then a year from now, when you decide to get back into Euro gaming, you'll be like so thrilled and you'll buy all the different Euro games and middleweight, lightweight, heavyweight. You should try it.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm good.
I did see, I got an no, I see. On Twitter, someone followed us and it's a game company and their game that they I don't know if their game is also the name of their company, but I read the description like when you hover over their icon on Twitter and it said basically game company our game is a Euro with a mix of dexterity. And I'm like, oh, Graham is gonna have to check this one out. This sounds like it's right up your alley.
Well, what was the game that came out last year? Was it Oceans?
Ocean
Ocean,
Mega.
Oceanus or something like that?
It was like Mega City Oceana. I don't know something.
Yeah.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, when you used like a Euro mechanics to build like an island, but then you had to have dexterity to push it into the middle of the table to connect it up to the other islands.
Yeah, it sounded cool. I looked at it a couple different times at a game store, but paying MSRP for it, it was a pretty expensive game.
There was also uh, Sarah's Vision. That
Oh
was
yeah,
Jenga with a Euro game.
yeah, that one looked interesting, but the pieces looked like they were plastic.
Yeah,
It looked pretty. I mean, it looked like they were plastic with like little stickers you had to put on them. It did not look very well produced.
no. And I saw a gameplay footage of it and kind of went, that's one of those games when I needed to buy when I first heard about it, but now I've seen more of it. It's no longer on my my purchasing
Right.
list.
Well, again, maybe that's why they do embargoes. They don't
Yeah.
want too much information getting out about the game.
Yeah.
So, all right, what's your first bite?
My first bite is a game called Solar Storm. This is a co-op game, and the idea is that I think you are a research vessel orbiting the sun, and something happened to your ship, and you're falling into the sun. So you're kind of going through the atmosphere, and of course your ship is starting to fall apart, and it's your job with your crew to kind of repair the ship to kind of blast you back out of the solar storm. It's a completely co-op game. There's no hidden traders or anything like that. Everybody's working together to repair the ship. So everybody has a little pawn, and you're going to be laying out the ship in I think it's a 3x3 tile. And each card represents a different part of the ship, like the ammunition room or the engine room or the shield room or whatever it is. The idea of the game is you want to repair the rooms and then divert power from the rooms back to the core of the ship, basically to the engine, to allow you to blast out of the solar storm. You have a hand of cards, and the cards are going to be different colors essentially, because when you on your turn, you're going to have three actions. One action is just to move, so you can move one spot, either left, right, up, or down. You can try and repair a room, and your room is going to have three symbols down the side of it. I think it's down the side, and that's going to be the components that are damaged. So it could be like two blues and a red, but there's going to be cubes over them that show them that the ones with the cubes are repaired. The ones without the cubes are the ones that are damaged. So if the red one is damaged, I have to go to that and play a red card out of my hand to repair it. If the room is completely repaired, you can then do the special action on that card. So one of the rooms allows you to, if your person's there and the room is fully repaired, you can repair one spot on anywhere else in the ship. So you still have to pay, you still have to have the card in your hand, but normally you can only repair one of the rooms if you're in the room itself. Well, this one allows you to repair somewhere else. And then once it's been repaired, you can then spend cards to route the power, or I think it's called divert power, from that room back to the center. You need to divert all the power from all the rooms back into the center. So you have to repair them all and then divert them all. After everybody's turn, you're going to be flipping over a card to see what rooms are damaged. And it's one of those, it's a preset deck that are stages 1, 2, and 3. So the stage 1 damages one room, stage 2 damages 2 rooms, etc. I'm pretty sure you can guess what the stage 3 is. So of course, your ship starts damaged. So you draw 2 cards off the bottom, and those will become damaged. So you know the stage ones are only going to be damaging one, but of course you don't have maybe don't have the best cards. So you're going to go through all of those, and then you think, oh, we almost have it done. We've diverted, one or two rooms. Then you hit the twos. Okay, now we need to work even harder. And then you kind of just get a handle on the twos, and then the threes hit. It seems to have a very good ramping of difficulty that you always feel like you just need one more turn or just get the right card flip so that where you are is where it's going to be damaged. So it's going to be an easy thing for the next person to repair. Never works out that way. It's always the opposite side of the ship. So you spend all your time running over there, and you don't repair anything, and then something else breaks. I enjoyed it. The times I've played, it's always come down to like this the last card flip or the second last card flip of whether we're going to make it or not. We have yet to win, but we always feel like we're just about to win, which is what I like co-op games to be. I don't like to lose co-op games on the very first turn. This one always kind of keeps me thinking we can we're almost there. We can almost fix this ship if we just get the right card flip, or if you can just get over there and do this, and that's 4 actions, you only have 3 actions. Is there any way that we can kind of piggyback on what you're doing or something like that? So I enjoyed it. It only takes half an hour to 45 minutes, so it's a relatively short co-op game, but it works quite well. So that is my first game is Solar Storm, and that is put out by Granada Games. It's a small little box. For the people that are watching this on video, it's only about kind of that big, so kind of almost like a roll and write size box. But it's cards, couple meeples, couple cubes. That's it. So yeah, I enjoyed it. That's Solar Storm.
So we talked earlier about games that make our wish list and then fall off. This is a game that I don't think I have anymore on my wish list on cool stuff. It was on there. I think it was only on there because the box cover, and it was a cooperative game. Other than that, I'm not sure why else I put it on there. It sounds interesting, but as you're talking about it and as you're describing, it's a co-op and you're trying to prevent or repair stuff and prevent damages. In my mind, I've been thinking, oh man, we need to get Gen 7 back to the table because that's a co-op. There's some dice rolling in it. You're trying to prevent stuff.
That is a semi co-op.
All right, well, whatever. Every co-op game with you is a semi co-op. Who are you kidding? But yeah, I mean, I would definitely give it a try. I don't think I'll go out and buy it because isn't this the one that plays? Is this 1 to 6 people or is this the 1 to 4?
This is 1 to 4.
Yeah. I mean, it looks to me. I don't think it would be a game that I'd be interested in playing solo, just because of the theme. But I definitely would give it a try.
Yeah, I mean the weight according to Board Game Geek is a 2.08, so it's definitely on the lighter side, and it really is. I mean, you have 3 things you can do in your turn, and you have 3 actions.
Yeah,
but it gives you just enough choices to kept my interest going. I think if it was a 2-hour game, I probably wouldn't have been as vested in it. But for a half hour, 40-minute game that was tense for a lot of it, it was enjoyable.
yeah, and I think that it does play fast, so for me that's a good selling point, at least for this style of game.
Yeah.
All right, so my first bite is a game called The Red Cathedral. The Red Cathedral is put out by Devere Games. It is a 1 to 4 player game. Says 30 minutes to 120, but I'm going to say probably an hour. Maybe it goes to 120 with 4 players. But I mean, maybe if you all were brand new and not very smart, maybe it would take 2 hours because there really shouldn't be a whole lot of AP in it. But anyways, it's like I said, it's a midway game. This is a Euro game that is set in the time period of I wouldn't say it's definitely not ancient Russia. It is like I think it's Peter the First, Tsar Peter the First. I think so. Anyway, it doesn't matter what the theme is. It could be any theme. But this is like I said, it's a Euro game, and really it focuses around there's a player board that everybody shares, and it has I don't know if it officially calls it a rondel or not. It's a circle that you're moving dice around and you're collecting resources off of. I call it a rondel. It's not a Mancala. I mean, you are dropping dice off, but you're only ever moving 1 die at a time. So I'm not really sure if there's a true Mancala mechanism because you're only doing one one thing at a time. But you're using these dice to collect different resources. And when you are moving the dice, you are looking at the die value, and that determines how many, they call them spaces, but each space is made up of three die locations. So kind of you're moving them by sectors. So if it's a two value, you can move it two sectors. And then you're putting the die in there. If there's already three dice in that sector, you can't make that move because you have to be able to put the die in there. So the only way you can move farther than what the die value is there's there's four different colored dice, one for each die, one for each player of the game. So the yellow player can spend a ruble to move one extra space. The blue player can spend a ruble to move the blue die one extra space. You can spend multiple rubles to move it more spaces if you have, but money's fairly tight. And then there's one white die, and it's a generic die, and anyone can spend an extra ruble to move that one more spaces. So you're kind of looking at what are the die values on the dice? Where's that going to put me? Do I want to spend more money to move it farther to get a different resource that I really need? Or do I want to be able to, do I want to land in a spot where it now puts three dice in there because the number of dice that are in there, not their value, the number of dice that are in there is going to multiply however many resources you're going to get. So the resource token could be one gem. So you would get three gems if there's three dice. The resource token could be two bricks. So now you're going to get six bricks because of three dice being there. And that sounds easy, and it sounds like, oh well, why wouldn't you just go for the bigger stuff? Because you don't want to max out your inventory. Your inventory for resources is limited to 10. So if you get six brick, you may not need them. You may not be able to use them. You could possibly trade them in, for other resources. So that's the main area of the board. Whenever you're done moving your die and you get your resources, you're going to re-roll the dice in all the dice that are in that section. So if there's three dice, you're going to re-roll all three of them. So the values are constantly changing. So there's that aspect. And then each player also has their player board, which they are going to use to put what they call workshop tiles on. So in this game, probably should have said this at the beginning, but in this game, you're building the sections of the Red Cathedral, and you need resources to build those sections. Well, as you claim different sections that your crew is going to work on, you put your little flag out on it, your little banner. And so when you put your banner out there, you're claiming that we're going to build this section, and then you take the workshop tile off of that section, and you can now place it on your player board. You have to pay to place it on your player board, but it's like 2 rubles up to 4 rubles, rubles, I should say, as far as what it's going to cost you. But you can decide where you want to place that tile and which colored die you want to associate it with. So if I take a tile, and let's say it's a tile that's going to give me more money, I can decide, okay, well, I'm incentivized already to want to move my own color die because I can move it farther by spending money. So I want to put this tile on it so that every time I activate my die, I'm gonna get a ruble because of the tile, and then I can basically move it one extra space for free every time. Do I want to sync that energy together? Do I want to put it on the red die? Because as you put these tiles out there, every time you move that color of die that it's associated with, you automatically get that bonus. It could be a gem, it could be a tile that has a different color die on it. So for example, if I put the white die tile on the yellow die, whenever I move the yellow die, I get the resource that is located where the white die is on the board. So there's some strategy to it, but a lot of it's kind of luck because you don't know where the dice are going to end up. So you're doing that aspect on your player board, and then the goal is you want to build sections of the cathedral, and maybe at the same time put some ornaments out on there. You can put fancy windows or a cross at the top, or a doorway that's going to give you bonus points. And the scoring of this game is really all based around what they call recognition points and prestige. So around the outside of the game board, you have what they call recognition points, which are little crosses, look like a cross, and they go 1, 2, 3, 4. They go all the way around in increments of one, and you are going to earn these recognition points when you finish sections of the cathedral, when you land on certain spots on the board, things like that. And then you have prestige markers. Prestige markers look like little Russian emblems with the eagle. I don't know if it's an eagle. It could be a vulture for all I know. Um, that that's their emblem, and they're going to start out with. They're going to be like the first one's going to be like on the 5 recognition point, and then the next one's going to be like maybe on the 10, and then it might go down to the next one will be like at the 13 or the 14. So they start out farther apart and then they get closer as you work your way around the board. So eventually it's going to just be just like the crosses, the recognition ones, that the prestige are just going to go in one value increments. And it's the prestige scoring that's going to determine who wins the game. So you can throughout the game, you have the ability to advance by recognition one at a time. And then once you get to prestige level, you're kind of locked in there. Or you can move by prestige values. It might say you may do something that says move 3 prestige values. So you could be leapfrogging farther along that track. At the end of the game, whoever triggers the end of the game is automatically going to get 3 of those prestige points. And then you're going to get scoring based off of the other stuff of what you've built. So it tightens up towards the end, but at the beginning of the game, you can do some serious jumping in some pretty big increments because you can always spend a prestige point to get money or to re-roll the dice. So at the beginning, it may not be worth it because you could drop back 4 recognition spaces. But at the end, we're only going to drop back 1 at a time, not as big of a deal. And sometimes you're incentivized. So if let's say it's prestige 0.5 and I'm at recognition 6 and I know I'm going to get more recognition points or I'm going to score a whole prestige points which would jump me up to like another 3 spots. I might be incentivized to just go ahead and spend a prestige point and drop 1 space, take the money because I know I'm going to leapfrog 4 spaces up when I do the other action. So there's some strategy to it. I mean, I do like kind of how it tightens up towards the end, but at the beginning, it can be pretty exciting when you get three prestige points and you jump basically 15 spaces up the board. But it's a it's a nice medium weight game. I don't know. I'm sure it doesn't do anything really new because even moving the dice based off their value to get the resources and then re-rolling them isn't anything. I don't think that hasn't been done before. But I do like the fact that there are lots of cards in this game, so the variability is pretty good as far as the different stuff you're going to see from game to game. And for me, that this game centers around that resource rondel, and it centers around also obviously the building of the cathedrals for the end scoring. The rest of it, the resource management stuff like that, is probably not anything too exciting, but I did enjoy it. I've only played it once as a multiplayer solo. It does have a solo variant to it. I haven't played it yet. My only concern is I don't. It may be too much to introduce to my family, and I don't know if it has enough meat on the bones to want to bring or for a seasoned gamer to want to keep coming back to it. So it could be a tweener, but right now I'm going to try to introduce it to the family, and I'm pretty happy playing it. I think you would enjoy it. I just don't think it would knock your socks off, particularly Graham.
Yeah, I did look into it when I first heard about it, and it did look intriguing. So I'm happy you bought it. It was intriguing that I would want to try it, but I didn't think I wanted to buy it. So I'm happy you
Right.
bought it. So hopefully, if we ever get to see each other anytime in the next couple of years, and you still have it, I'll be able to play your copy because I'm intrigued enough that I do want to play it.
And I don't know if it's on Tabletopia or not. I haven't looked. I've been on Tabletopia forever. But yeah, that may be an option as well. Like I said, it's enjoyable. I did enjoy it, and again, I don't know if I enjoyed it as much because it's a Devere game and I have a soft spot for them, or if I mean, there was nothing in the game that I didn't like that I felt like, well, this is kind of stupid. I really did enjoy the dice aspect. That whole like, okay, move here, 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 and I want to spend the extra coin. I don't know if I move this one instead, I could get 4 brick, but do I need 4 brick? It's just going to clog stuff up. So yeah, It was pretty fun.
Okay, so my second game is a game that both Dean and I own. We both purchased it, and I have played it. And Dean, surprise, surprise, Dean has not played it yet.
Hmm. Is
This
it
is
still in shrink?
a free. I'm almost guaranteed for you, it's still in shrink.
Hmm. That doesn't narrow it down that much.
No, it
But
does
go
not.
ahead.
So this is Dominant Species Marine.
No, it is still in shrink.
Yes, this is from GMT Games. Plays 2 to 4 players, an hour and a half to 3 hours, something like that, or 2.5 hours, something like that. And it is a 3.79 weight, so it's definitely. I was talking Solar Storm, which was a nice, reasonably light co-op game. This is a very mean, confrontational, heavy game. So Dominant Species, the original one, came out many years ago, and that one used to be my favorite game of all time. Used to be either one or two of my top 100. It is slipped because it's hard for me to get it to the table. When I saw that he had Dominant Species Marine come out, I originally wasn't going to buy it, but I figured maybe I can convince my wife to play it with me. And so we were able to get it to the table. Dominant Species Marine, and I'll just talk about Marine. I'm not going to go into too much the differences between the original one, but I'm assuming, if you know the original one, you know what's different. It doesn't matter if you don't know what the original one is. So Dominant Species is all about the evolution of species. Each person starts with a species that you pick, goes from like cephalopods, fish, and lower level ones like shrimps and stuff like that. So there's like a food order that's built into the board. That's kind of sometimes used for breaking ties. So you have the food pyramid goes top to bottom. So the top predator is on top, and the one that gets fed on is at the bottom. But turn order goes from bottom to top. And on your turn, you're going to have a bunch of pillars, which are your color, and you have cubes, which are your species. Beginning of the game, everybody starts in the very middle coral reef. Everybody puts 3 of their species on there. The rest of your species are kept on your card. And you are going to take one of your pillars, you're going to place them somewhere on one of the actions. And the actions go from top to bottom, and that matters because one of the things that this game does is if I put my very first piece in the middle of the actions, the next piece I place has to be lower than that. Either has to be to the right or lower from the previous action I picked. So I'm skipping over a whole bunch of actions at the beginning of the track. The different actions are going to be very biological in nature. So the very first one is, I think it's called abundance, and that is putting more food onto the board. Because the board is made up of hexes, and you're going to be exploring the hexes and expanding it. It comes with some hexes already set up. So around the middle hex, there's one of each type of food. The abundance allows you to place from its pool of options. You get to pick one of those and place it onto the board, and that means that corner of the hex now produces that food as well, because each animal has to eat, and they will have on their board what they can eat. They're going to eat one of the 7, well, usually 2 of the 7 different food sources on the board. So abundance allows you to put more of these food sources on the board, which basically means allow later on you're going to be able to expand in those spaces because your creatures can eat. There's going to be things that are going to be protecting yourself, because at certain times in the game you are going to lose the ability to feed on certain foodstuffs if you basically lose that trait, because this isn't played over like a couple of years. This is generations of your animals are going through this. So you're going to be gaining and losing the ability to eat some things. You're going to be gaining traits, for example. There's going to be things like adding a food trait to your animal or to your species. So your species can now eat more different things. You do have a limit, though. I think the limit is a total of 6. You start with 3 and you can add 3 more. So you can add more of the same, or you can add different ones. Because one of the further down actions, I think it's the second last or the third last, is called dominance. And what dominance does is you look at, well, you pick a food source. I'm going to look at algae. I have 2 algae on my board that I can eat. Then I look at the main board and I look where all my species are, and look at how many hexes my species are on that have algae as a food source. So let's say there's 3 on the board. So there's 3 hexes that I'm on the board that have algae as a food source. I then look at my board and see I have 2 algae on there. Multiply them 2 together, I come up with 6. I then look at the counter on the scoreboard for algae and find out where it is. If my dominant score is more than what is on the scoreboard for algae, then I move the algae token to 6, and I get the algae extra white pillar. So that not only does that give me an extra actions I can do, but it also gives me options to go on special actions that you can only put white pillars on. And white pillars can also are the only pillars that you can place before other ones you've already placed. So again, if I place in the middle, if my first action is one of my colored ones in the middle, I can't place one of my colored ones above it, but I can place a white one above it. And you can get multiple of these whites based on your dominant scores. But people can take it away, because if Dean has 3 algae on his board and he's on 4 hexes on the board that have algae, his is 12. So his is more than 6. So he gets the pillar and he moves his thing back up to 12. So that's the way those dominants go through. And it's very critical to make sure that you're dominant in some of those things to get those extra pillars, because they are pretty powerful. And you can end up with multiple white pillars, which is good for you. Those pillars can also kick other people's colored pawns off certain spots. So if you really need to go on a spot, you can kick someone off and say, I'm putting my white pawn on there. Whenever you have gone to the very bottom, the very last action you can take is a recall, which basically just makes taking all of your pillars back. When you do that, you move your cube from, there's like a little track with everybody's cube on there, that you move them to the other side. When everybody has moved their cube to the other side, you basically stop and do an era change, or it's like a timed thing that you are going to be moving some tokens down. This is the time that if there's tokens in the basically a loss thing, if you don't have one of your markers there, then if you have to remove that one from your board. So again, if algae was in that section and I didn't have a pawn to protect me, I'd have to take one of my algae tokens off my player board, which means I'm no longer going to be able to eat algae. Then you're going to be restocking all the tokens. I should mention that another key piece of the game is the when you do dominance, is the other time you get to pick. Well, you are forced to take one of the cards from the side. There are 5 cards that are always going to be face up, and they're going to be randomized throughout the game. And you're going to take it and do whatever it says. Sometimes they are ways to get points, like score 1 point for every hex that you're on that where you eat shrimp, for example. Or they could be really nasty cards, such as removing one opponent's cube for every hex that you are on. So if you're on every hex, that card allows me to remove 1 cube from every single hex that I'm on. So those cards can be very vicious. The game ends when the asteroid card comes up and someone takes it to action. So the asteroid card is always shuffled into the last 5 cards of the deck or 10 cards deck. It's shuffled into the bottom of the deck. So you don't know exactly when it's going to come up, but you know it's going to be right near the end of the deck. That's going to come out when someone does dominance and they take that card, the game ends. And then you look at the board itself and you look at every hex, and there's going to be 2 to 3 numbers on the hex. And it's whoever has the most species on there will get the biggest number, and then second most will get the middle number. So you're going to be scoring end of game points like that. There's a whole lot more to this game. It is a GMT game, so the rules aren't 2 pages. They're like 20-something pages long. I've played it twice now. I enjoy it. I don't think I enjoy it as much as the regular dominant species. And my wife, Lela, enjoyed it, but she's not sure she wants to play it again, because I was reading someone's comment on Board Game Geek, and they basically said it's a war game dressed up with animals. I kind of got thinking, saying yes, because you are always in people's faces. From turn 1, you're thinking, I need to kick these people out. How do I get Dean off this tile? How do I stop him from having dominance here? How can I eat his creatures? Or, what can I do to Dean to slow him down? But also, how do I get more? So how can I spread to where Dean is? How can I take food sources away from him? So the whole game is about that. You are really vying. My wife was also saying it feels very thematic. It feels like being in the jungle where all the animals are attacking each other. So if you're looking for a solitary Euro game, this is not it. If you're looking for a more complex, longer game that it is very, very confrontational, that every round there is huge player interaction from either taking the actions or like taking the action selection piece away from someone else, or making sure that they can't protect themselves from losing one of their cubes, or taking a food source off the board, or putting a food source on so I can claim dominance and take that white piece away from you, or playing the cards against other people. You're always looking how you can attack other players. So if that doesn't appeal to you, I would say dominant species probably isn't the game for you. But if that does intrigue you, if you really enjoy that confrontational game, I like the theme of this one. Like I said, I don't like it as much as the original dominant species, but I think this one's probably slightly easier to get into. So if you are looking to get into the dominant species, I may suggest try Marine first because it is slightly easier to get into. It's slightly easier to comprehend because they have streamlined some rules. They have changed the action selection where when you place the pawn, you take the action as opposed to the original dominant species where everybody placed, then they all triggered off, which made it slightly harder to plan. So yeah, if it sounds interesting, I would suggest trying dominant species Marine. If you really like that, you may want to step up to a slight complexity increase to regular dominant species. So that is Dominant Species Marine from GMT Games.
Yeah, so this one is I mean, I bought it because I had never played the original Dominant Species, and I don't own it. So I thought this one is supposed to be slightly more accessible to a new player to it. And I like that kind of prehistoric aquatica sort of vibe that it has. I probably made a mistake in buying it, to be quite honest, because I don't know when I'm ever going to get it played. Especially if you like the other one, the original version better. But I think I got it for a pretty good price. Probably why I bought it. I don't. I mean, it makes sense if it's very confrontational and if it's a war game with animals because of the designer. Chad Jensen, designer of Combat Commander, is that's his baby. So yeah, it makes perfect sense for that.
Yeah.
I I don't know if I'll ever play it. I mean, I'll only get to play it at a con more than likely with with you and Eric or whoever. So I probably didn't need to buy it, but it looks pretty.
Yeah.
It's got a great box cover.
And I would definitely play it with you. Like it's not like Dominant Species is great and Marine is terrible. It's like Dominant Species is great and Marine just didn't live up to the same level. It's still a really good game. Like if you bought it, or in my mind, I'm not sure where the Dominant Species is still in print.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's had numerous printings, so I'm not
Yeah.
sure where it's in the cycle.
So if it's not in print, I wouldn't say, well, go back and buy it in the aftermarket. It's the only way to go. Dominant Species Marine is in print. If that's the one that's available to you, it's almost as good. You're going to have lots of fun with it. So just get the thing that's available to you.
All right. All right. Well, very good. I do want to try it. It's not at the top of my list of games to get played, but it's definitely Dominant Species was just kind of all it was probably on my wish list, if that means anything to you. But anyways, you know,
You've never played it, so obviously it's just being on your wish list doesn't mean anything.
well, and obviously I should take it off if after how long has it been out? 12 years, 10
I think so.
years?
Yeah.
If I haven't gotten it by now, probably people should start burning their copies. All right, so that's going to wrap up our first bite segment. We are going to move on to our top three list this episode, not top five, top three, only because I wasn't sure if either one of us could come up with 5 games for the topic. Thought we'd do something slightly different, and that is a top 3 games basically that you dread having to roll a die or a dice in. So top 3 games that you dread having to roll the dice or a die. Only caveat I put out there was it couldn't be the sole mechanism of the game. So no rolling rights, things like that. But other than that, everything else is kind of fair play. So we are in a even episode, which means nothing to me, but I'll go ahead and go first. All right. So my number three is a game that I don't know if it, I doubt if it'd be on Graham's list. I don't think he enjoys the game that much, but that is Time Stories. Time Stories, it has dice in it. I mean, I don't think it's, I mean, the puzzle solving is the main part of the game, but you are going to have to roll dice. I've never played one of the modules where the dice aren't involved. You have to roll the dice not only for seeing how many temporal units you're spending to move to the different locations, which can be which let's say that's crucial in that game. If you're just burning time units, temporal units, you're not going to do well. And if you get some bad dice in that game or some bad die rolling, it's going to punish you. And it always seems like every every let's say every play, trying to think of the word I'm trying to use. So you're going to play a module multiple times. So
Recycle. Yeah.
yeah. So every recycle that you play always seems like at least one or two of them come down to, okay, we can do this as long as we don't spend two time units. We can only afford to spend one time unit to get to the last location to be able to have enough time left to do what we need to do. And as soon as you say that, it always seems like, oh, of course, Graham rolled two time units. Way to go, Graham. And it almost becomes a joke of like no one wants to roll no one wants to be the leader or whatever they call it in that game, where they have to, was it the time captain, I think, where they're the ones rolling the die. It was like, no, 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 you can roll it, it's fine. So you have that aspect, and then of course you have the dice that you're rolling in the individual puzzles, and it could be a combat, it could be, they change this from module to module. Sometimes you're fighting, sometimes you're scavenging or whatever, but you're still rolling the dice. And it's the same thing of, some of them are going to be blank, some of them are going to have hits, some of them will have multiple hits, and then some of them will have the skulls on there. And you're trying to work your way through those time shields or through those shields on the different cards. And it's, some of the cards have counterattacks. So depending on how many skulls you roll is going to determine how many times they're going to hit you back. And again, it's just one of those things where it comes down to, okay, we can do this. If Dean can just roll, just doesn't roll two skulls, we've got it. And then sure enough, it's like, all that hard work. Now we have to recycle and start all over again, which I get that that's part of the game, but it can be it can be a little frustrating. But again, that comes down to you have a chance to win. It just comes down to that dreaded die roll.
Yeah, it's funny because this one would not have made my list. And I'm wondering whether it's because you've only played the first three modules.
Two or three, I can't remember.
I've played all the modules in the white box series. The more I went on in that game, the less I cared about the dice rolls, because you were almost always guaranteed to have to go through each one multiple times. Then it just got to the point when you're like, okay, we're going to fight this guy again. Let's just go through it. You know what? And even if you were coming close to the end of a time, like of a cycle, and your time was running out, it didn't really matter, because you're just going to reset. It's not going to stop your game. You're going to have to go through the same stuff again to get to where you were before, to kind of pass the test. But I think the first couple modules I played, it's like, yes, that was very important. You want to try and do it in as little time as possible because it really matters. And as you played more of it, it was like that mattered less and less. So I think it's just because I played so much of it that the importance of the dice rolling maybe got diminished for me.
Yeah, I think the difference is that you're pessimistic about your dice rolling because you're not good at it.
I think I'm a realist.
Well, my die rolling skills are pretty good, and so I'm disappointed when I don't roll well or when the dice are cursed, and that's what causes me to lose. So I'm more of the die is on a 5 or 6 versus yours are always a natural 1 or 2.
Mine's are falling off the table.
That's right. Yours are chipped and uneven.
Yeah.
And yeah. So, anyways, that's my number three, time stories.
So I had a hard time coming up with a list. So I tried to pick types of games and then a game from that type. So my first one was action strength. And the one I picked for this is Grand Austria Hotel. So Grand Austria Hotel, you roll a bunch of dice, and each die number will give actions. So you're going to have 1 through 5, and 6 is kind of wild, but they're going to, you are rolling them as a pool of dice for all players to use, and they all get split up. So you put all the ones here, all the twos here, and all the threes here. You then will have people taking their turns to say, okay, I'm going to do the 2 action. And depending on how many 2 dice are in that 2 die action, is how strong that action is going to be. And quite often near the end of the game, it's like, I just need 3 ones so I can get that stupid cake. No, the number 1 would be liquids. So I can get that stupid wine, and only 2 ones are rolled. It's like, because you have to take more of the coffee than wine. So you need, you need a minimum number of dice in there to take that second action. And I always find that I dread that die roll, because you're like, I just need this type of, I just need this action with this strength.
Right.
And with Grand Austria Hotel, you can actually pass. You can say, I'm not going to take any dice. And once everybody else has done their turns, you then take the dice and you re-roll them, but you have to lose a die. I don't know how many times I've gone through rolling the dice, lose a die, roll, lose a die, roll, rolling down to like 3 dice. I just need like a 5. The die rolls never come out in my favor, but I really like that dread that I feel of when those dice are first rolled for the round. You kind of look at them and think, I need action A, I need action B, I need action C, and all the dice are on action E and F. And you're like, oh, now what are you going to do? The good thing about Grand Austria Hotel is there are options you can get around that. Like I said, you can skip and then re-roll all the dice in the pool again, or you can use 6s as wilds as something else, but you have to pay for that. So for me, it's that dice roll in Grand Austria Hotel, which I always dread, because I know I'm never going to get the actions that I need. Now, you have played Grand Austria Hotel, haven't you?
Sorry. Yes, I have. Yeah, I guess I don't. I guess in that game, because there's so many dice and there's always seems like there's something that you can do. I don't. It didn't come to, to the forethought. But
But
I can understand that as the game goes on, you are looking for that one specific die
yeah,
or die roll.
and quite often for the middle numbers, it's not too bad when you get 2 or 3, it's fine. But it's the resources, because you have to take uh, the lower resources first, whether it's the liquids or the cakes or strudels or whatever. You always have to take more of the lesser one than the greater one. So if there's only 1 or 2 dice in there, you're never getting a chance to get the upper level goods.
Right. No, I get it. Still a great game though.
Yeah.
All right, my number 2 is a game that both Graham and I have played. I think he owns it. We've only played it on Tabletopia, but we've played it multiple times, and that is Subterra. Subterra, well, yes, it is kind of it's a little bit of a push your luck game. You're exploring the caverns and you're trying to find your way out and trying to avoid cave-ins and floods and the monsters or whatever. And it's a co-op game, and everyone has their own special kind of powers. This game, so you have to roll a die in this game a couple different times. You're going to roll it at the very end. If time starts to run out, you're going to roll to see if your flashlights die. I don't know if I've ever gotten to that point in a game before. I think we just die before that. But the die rolling in it when you have to roll for the cave-ins. I don't care how many times I play the game. It's another one that's like, okay, we're fine as long as we don't roll, a 2, or it might be 2 die or whatever, as long as you don't roll a 2 or a 3, because if we do, then it's going to crush Graham, and we're dead, because he's the medic or whatever. And it's always a tense die roll. It's always one of those, okay, we've got a chance. I'm 4 steps from the exit, just don't roll this. And of course that's exactly what happens. So I enjoy the game. I like playing it a lot. But it is one of those where it's definitely not the central feature of the game or the main mechanism. But man, does that die come back and cause a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's funny because your number two is very close to my number two, in which you just don't want certain numbers to be rolled. And I was trying to think of other games for my second one that use the same mechanism. And this is the monster appearing in lobotomy.
Mm.
So yeah, there's attacking and lobotomy, which uses dice, and I'll talk about that later. But the dreaded roll that I have is when you have to spawn a monster and you roll these two dice, and it's going to determine which quadrant it is, and then what number within that quadrant. And of course, you always want the monsters to be spawning somewhere else. You're like, okay, I'm down to my last health. As long as there's no monsters around me, I'll be fine. I can run in and grab the idol or do whatever it is you need to do. But you roll that D6, the D10 and the D4. You're like, okay, as long as I don't roll quadrant 3, so you roll 3. Okay, fine. It's in my quadrant. I'm right beside number 10. As long as I don't roll, oh, I've rolled a 10. Then the monster appears right beside you, then they attack, and then you're like, we're screwed. But it's that dread of where that monster is going to appear, or they use that kind of randomization for a lot of things. Monsters appearing, or the resource you have to collect is randomized by that. And of course, monsters always appear right beside you, and the resources always end up on the complete opposite side of the board for me. So I think it adds a really nice random element to that game, because it is a horror themed game. So having stuff kind of pop up beside you just because the die roll, I always imagine that they're crashing through the walls type thing, typical horror movie stuff. But it was, yeah, that is one where I'm always dreading, because you're almost always, every round, you're almost always rolling for new monsters to appear on the board. And it's always very critical where they show up. So you're always anxiously seeing where they're going to show up, and can you deal with them, or are they far enough that you don't have to worry about them for a little while and you can kind of recover some of your health. So that is my number two. I know it's on a lot of my lists, and but I just thought it worked really well for the dread of rolling the dice, and that is lobotomy.
Yeah, if I could find out, if I could co-op the chit pooling of Arkham Horror, the card game, into this top 3 list, I would definitely do it just for Ian. So, all right. So my number one is a game that, again, I think you've played. I just don't think you like it, or maybe you just didn't care enough to ever play it again. But again, it's one of those where it's not the only thing you're doing in the game. It's certainly not the main gist of the game, but you cannot avoid it in the game. You have to roll this die, and the game is Dead of Winter. And in Dead of Winter, you have to roll for exposure whenever you're leaving the colony and you're going to one of the locations to search for equipment or medicine or whatever the case may be. When you leave the colony, you got to do it. And when you move from location to location, you have to do it. And I want to say it's an 8-sided die. It could be a 12-sided die. I don't remember off the top of my head. But there are basically 4 results. There's a blank, nothing happens. You could get a frostbite, which it basically counts as a wound. And then I think it's kind of one of those where, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, at the beginning of your next turn you get additional wound markers from it if you don't stop it. And then you actually have the wound marker, the wound result itself, which is just going to give you a wound token. And most survivors, I want to say, can have up to 3 wounds. I think it's universal, everyone gets the same. And then the worst one, the one that you're always trying to avoid, and I want to say maybe there's just 1 result on the die. There could be 2, and that is the bite marker. You've been bitten, and when you get bitten by the zombie, you automatically, your survivor is going to die. And I think in this one, again, if I remember correctly, it's been quite some time. I should ask Nolan; he probably remembers. Whoever dies is gonna be based off of the kind of the of it's the I think it's the lowest influence of who's in your little group, and then it spreads to the next lowest person, like within the colony, and it can kind of have a ripple effect. But it's one of those where, okay, I need to go from the police station to the grocery store, just gotta roll this die. And again, I want to say the bite marker might be only one space out of 8 or one space out of 12 on the face of the die. And it's another one of those where, you know, just exactly the wrong time, you either get the frostbite or you get or worse, you get the bite mark, and it totally throws all your plans into disarray. And yeah, but to me, that is the game where it is the most that I can think of top of my head. This is the most punishing die roll you're going to take because you cannot avoid it. Some of the other games you maybe can get away with, well, not necessarily the ones on my list, but other games that have dice, you maybe can mitigate or avoid it as much as possible. But in this game, you have to leave the colony. And so you have to roll that die. So that is my number one, the exposure die in Dead of Winter.
So my number one comes from another horror game. This is one called Deep Madness. And Deep Madness is another game that has, you're rolling a bunch of dice to attack the monsters, whatever else. That's typical. What I find I dread in this is having to open up doors to get away from the monsters, because the monsters are generally slow moving, just like a kind of typical horror game. So you run through, you kill a couple, and you get to the door. And you need to roll the dice based on your skill to open up that door. And you need 5s or 6s to win, to basically open the door to protect yourself. And you roll your dice and you're like, I just need 2 6s. That's all I need. I need 2 successes. That's all I need. I'm rolling like 5 dice. There's no way I failed. Okay, well, I got a second chance. And then, of course, there's a whole lineup of your people behind you who need you to open up that door, because in Deep Madness, the trail of who activates when is going to change every round. So Dean's not always going to go first. So if we say, okay, Dean, you need to run to that door to open, so then I can run through because I'm, third in line, so I can, whatever, drag you through or start killing monsters there, that's fine. So you run up to the door, you roll your dice, and you're like, nope, I can't open the door because I failed rolling all the dice. Then I'm like, okay, then let's change the plans, because, our one plan, our one hope of winning was to get through this door so we can go on to the next section, or, flip the switch or do whatever else. And I always dread rolling the dice to open the door, activate the switch, whatever it is to save myself in that game. I always dread rolling those dice because I never seem to roll enough, even though statistically I should be able to do it. It never works out in my favor. So that is activating any switch or any door from the game Deep Madness.
So ultimately, all of your characters went to the far side gifted school, or the kid with the pushing on the pool pool door. Yeah. It's interesting in those games because thematically it's weird, because you have the strength to battle these monsters and kill these monsters, but yet you're fumbling with the doorknob or the lock or whatever. You think you just be able to bash them down if you just defeated monsters.
Wait, I mean, you've seen the movies. The movies always have the guy with the gun shooting the monsters and yelling at the person behind him who's fumbling with the keys because they can't open the door, and they're sticking it in the window, sticking it in the sides, finally getting the hole in the key in the lock, and they're finally able to open it. And of course there's monsters on the other side too, but that I always find that thematic in terms of referencing it back to a game. I don't know how real life it is, but a movie. That Deep Madness is very cinematic in that sense, in which it does feel like you've seen this happen in a movie. So you can very easily play it out in your head of, exactly what's happening in the game.
You would think if there's monsters on the other side, they would help you open the door. Or you think they're just standing there like with their little claws laughing, like, oh, look at these
they're
people.
They're pressed
so
up against the wall.
Yeah.
Comes.
Yeah. And then finally they just get bored, like, come on, open the door. I want to kill you. What's taking so long?
One of them reaches out with a tentacle and just kind of battles the handle.
The latch. Yeah. All right, so that's our top 3 games that we dread rolling the dice in. Kind of themed, a lot of horror games, a lot of games where obviously I would say you're pushing your luck a little bit, but you're definitely going to have some very negative consequences if you fail those die rolls. I think how much time we got? Are we good on time? What are
Yeah,
we doing here?
we're gonna on time.
Okay. So last episode we had Ask Your Chef episode or a segment prepared. We didn't get to it because we ran out of time. So I thought we'd do it this time. And let me pull it up because I can't remember off the top of my head what it was.
Okay,
And
so
that,
while
oh, go
you're
ahead.
pulling that up, I just want to quickly mention a shout out to our top tier Patreon people. We like to give a shout out to the people that are donating at the top tier in our Patreon, and that is Viger and Tom. So a big shout out and thank you for your support.
Absolutely. And the other supporters as well. Not that you're well, I guess technically you're a little less if you're not the fool, but anyway, ignore that. All right. So the Ask the Chef question I had was because we had talked about gateway games, maybe the episode before. I don't remember what it was, but my question to you is, do you think that experienced gamers, whether it be ourselves or other people you know, do you think that we misjudge what is actually a good gateway slash intro game?
So this came up because I had a discussion with Dean several weeks ago
Oh,
that
this is totally
totally new,
off the cuff.
totally off the cuff. Um, so my feeling is yes. I think when you're in the hobby for any length of time, you kind of shift everybody in your head with you. So, for example, we just finished talking about Dominant Species Marine, or even the original Dominant Species. They're 3.75 to a 4 on Board Game Geek, and we think those are heavier games. Then we kind of look back at Ticket to Ride and think anybody can play Ticket to Ride. It's the easiest game. It's a perfect gateway game. Well, I have played Ticket to Ride with people who've never played board games before, and they struggled with it. Not that they didn't know what to do, but I had to keep on reminding them that, okay, on your turn, you can do one thing. You can do take tickets, lay tracks. Okay, to lay tracks, remember, you have to be able to lay, one color. Oh, no, but that's a tunnel. We need to do this. Or yes, you can use a wild. No, you don't, they don't have to all be wild. So I think we often forget that people that have no experience to board games, or yeah, no experience to the board games, I think we set that bar actually a little too high to what we think gateway games are. And maybe the gateway games we think about are for people that are used to playing board games, but more like Monopoly and um, whatever else. But I didn't grow up playing board games in my family. We played a couple of card games and that was it. So when I introduced Ticket to Ride to my parents, my dad got it, but it took him a while to get it. And my brother-in-law, he's never played a board game before in his life. So we introduced some gateway games to him. And again, he got it, but it kind of looking back and going, they're struggling with it. This should be easy because we find it easy. But no, it's like learning anything new. Like the first time if you knit, the first time you pick up needles, it's not second nature to you anymore. The first time you ride a bike, it takes some time and practice to get used to it. And I think because we are so used to playing these games, we don't realize that what we consider gateway games may not be gateway games, that we may, for some people, they need a step even before that if they've never played any board games in their life before. We just assume that if you've never been around games before, you can start right at Ticket to Ride. I think if you have been around mass market games and remember playing Monopoly and remember, roll and move games or Candyland or, Trivial Pursuit and things like that, and you're used to that actions on your turn, then maybe Ticket to Ride is. But there's also a group of people that we try and introduce games to that don't have that background experience. And, I found it interesting when I was teaching games to the both of those sets, that I kind of have to remind myself that they haven't been playing games for 10 years like I have, or longer. The Dean, or a lot of our listeners did play some sort of games with their family growing up. Well, if you never had that, then maybe what we consider gateway games are not. I can say they're not gateway games. They are. They're intro games, but they may not be as intro as maybe what we need. And there's probably a reason why Munchkin is so popular, because it is extremely simple. You play a card, you do what's on the card, and you're done. We quite often not look down on, but we kind of scoff at Exploding Kittens or Cards Against Humanity. but they're very popular because they are really, really simple games. Things like Uno or Yahtzee. They're so simple that we think those aren't intro games. Those are the games you play before you get to intro games. Well, quite often, yes, that's where some people need to start. You need to start them with those games to give them the fundamentals of how games work. Then you can say, here's an intro hobby game, which is different from a pure gateway first steps into gaming.
So do you think that it's poor judgment, or do you think that people are just excited to show off a game that they really love, or maybe that was their intro, that was their gateway game, Ticket to Ride, that they want to show that off? Or do you think it's just more of one of those where, hey, I really want to play this game myself. So, yes, this would be a perfect game for me to introduce to you. You've never played a game. I don't really care if you enjoy it. I just want to be able to get it played.
I think it's more of we forget what it was like to be brand new in the hobby. Because if you've been in the hobby for, yeah, there's no minimum set time. But quite often when people get into hobbies, you're learning everything there is. You just consume every piece of media, play every game you can, and you ramp up fairly quickly. That we soon lose sight of what our very, very first game was and what it was like to, take those first initial steps into playing even a Munchkin or a Ticket to Ride or a Splendor or whatever else. Especially if you don't have someone who's holding your hand. And by that, I mean, an experienced player to say, I'm going to explain the rules to you. I'm going to make sure that you're playing it correctly. I will help you learn the rules because I'm experienced for it. That quite often we say, oh, there's a family that's interested in playing board games. We'll start them Ticket to Ride. If they've never played board games before, maybe Ticket to Ride is that one step above what they really need.
So, taking it one step further, so you've introduced Ticket to Ride to somebody, first game they've played. They enjoyed it. They kind of understood it. Do you think that we as an individual or as a hobby, do you think that we get excited by that, and so therefore the second game we're gonna show them, we take it up way too far, say from a Ticket to Ride to, hey, let's try Trajan, you might enjoy this.
I think it's I think it's a very slippery slope. And I think it really depends on what style of games that you like. So, for example, I like heavier, meatier heroes. So I want that new person to get up to my level very quickly. There are a large group of people that never want to go beyond lighter heroes. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if you are that type of person, then that jump to Ticket to Ride to the type of game that you would generally like to play isn't that big a leap. If you like playing, some of Dean's complex war games that are going to take 8 hours to play, the leap from Ticket to Ride to that is huge. So quite often you want to rush the people to your level, and I think it depends on what your level is. Where do you want to get them to? That we tend to lose sight of the steps that you need to take to get there.
Yeah, and so we had talked about this, but I have been thinking because I talked about how I introduced um, Brennan to Pandemic Fall of Rome, and then it was The Lost Ruins of Arnak. And it wasn't because I really, had a plan laid out. It's just that's what happened. I was putting on the table, and I wanted to get him played too or whatever. So I probably didn't put a lot of forethought into it. But then I was also thinking, even with introducing you to war games, it was table battles and then combat commander. But at the same time, in my mind, I'm thinking, Graham's not stupid. I mean, while he may not be versed in war games, it shouldn't be overly complex, but it's more of the transition to that was probably your first real hex encounter game sort of thing. So maybe that was too. I didn't realize that Combat Commander was weighted as heavily as it is. So I went back and looked at it. I'm like, oh, that's like a 3.64. So that might have been a little too much. Again, not that you didn't understand it. It was more of a understanding of kind of how everything flows together, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So again, it's one of those things that kind of prompted a lot of this was maybe we don't spend a lot of time and thought planning out the process. But again, I think part of that is because we're not sure. Okay, we may never get this person back to the table again. If it's not the perfect game, they may not want to play again. So it's, it's a wasted opportunity. Or okay, they did like this first game, and I really, I don't want to play, another 12 gateway games. I want to play, some games I want to enjoy. So we kind of force feed them. And again, I think it's one of those where we get overly excited that someone's interested in the hobby. So now we're going to open the fire hose up and we're going to force down, something that they probably aren't ready for. It's not, again, it's not because they won't understand it, or that they're, they're dumb or whatever. It's just that there's a progress, there's a progression to learning. And that's, I know you're not a big fan of Devere games. That's one of the reasons I like Devere games, is they take mechanisms and might put one or two in a game, and they're nice little intro to those mechanisms that you can build upon.
Yeah, but it kind of goes back to my point before, is it's the level you're trying to get them to.
Mhm.
If you enjoy lightweight Euros or lightweight dexterity games or whatever else, then the leap from your gateway games to the level you want to get that person to is much smaller. I think for people like you and I, and I'm sure a fair number of our listeners too, who tend to like medium to heavyweight Euros or war games or whatever else, that leap is bigger. And we want to rush the people, like you're saying, we want to rush them from Ticket to Ride right to Trajan, and then Food Chain Magnets, the third game that they play. And we forget that no, it's like Ticket to Ride, and then you slightly increase it to Dominion or something like that, or introduce a new uh, piece of the hobby to them. But
Mhm.
we are, I think it's because we're so excited to play games that we still really love playing games. We want everybody to enjoy them like we enjoy them. That we may forget that, what, that person who likes Ticket to Ride, maybe that's the level they ever get to, and they are having a fantastic time playing that level of game, and they don't need to be at the same place that we are and still love the hobby. They can stick with the Ticket to Rides and Splendors and Azul, because there's a ton of really great games in that weight that some people never want to go more than that, because they just want to sit down, they just want to have a fun time for 20 minutes to half an hour, or an hour, whatever it is. They want to have maybe enjoy the company, have a glass of wine or whatever else, and have a great conversation while playing the game, but not have to worry about that they're making the prime move every single time. They just want to be there to enjoy the game. You and I are more of, the game is the reason why we're at the table with other people. So let's concentrate on the game, as to opposed to some people who just are there to enjoy themselves. And the game facilitates that. But as long as the game is enjoyable, they're happy to play it, as a social. You and I are like, no, let's have a really thinky, crunchy game where it's, head against head, when everything else kind of gets pushed aside, and that's what we're playing.
Or you, who blocks them on Ticket to Ride in their very first game ever. Like, oh, did you need that track? I'm sorry. Yeah, I think I've made a more concerted effort, especially with my family, now that, especially now that Amy's more willing to play games with me, in that I'm much more focused on not wanting to overwhelm her. And again, I mean, she's smart. I mean, as she tells me, she's almost a doctor. Um, but it, I don't want, I use this kind of metaphor, I guess. It's kind of like a baby, a baby deer, a little doe, going up to drink out of water. You don't want to startle it, don't want to scare it off or whatever. And that's kind of how I am with trying to introduce games. I don't want to overwhelm them to where they don't want to play it again. But at the same time, I want to try to just build a little bit more from the last game
Yep.
and I know, listen, my family's never going to want to play, a heavy game, at least not to my knowledge. That's just not their thing. And I'm okay with it. If I could get them consistently to like a medium weight, or, somewhere between a 2 to a 2.5, maybe a 2.5, whatever, I'd be more than thrilled with that, because there's so many games that I enjoy that are in that class. I just want them to be able, I mean, I just want them to play games, I want them to see the joy of the hobby and focus on me and my wants and needs and play games with me.
But I think that's a very good point. This is your hobby. This isn't their hobby. So it's like for both of us. I mean, this is my prime hobby right now. So this is where a lot of my time goes into is doing podcasts, researching games, watching reviews, watching playthroughs, whatever else, checking out Board Game Geek, daily or every couple times a week, because that's what we're interested in. But now we're asking other people who have other hobbies that board gaming they may enjoy, but it's not their hobby.
Right.
They'll play a game with you, but they're not going to take the time to figure out what the next game is going to be for them. They want to spend time with, well, maybe not you. They want to spend time with me. So they'll play a game. So like Lella enjoys playing games, but she's not interested in learning anything about Board Game Geek. She's not interested in going to any con. She's not interested on what the latest reviews are. She just wants to sit down and have a good time. Now, I'm lucky that she is willing to play heavier games because she enjoys those as well. But that's not her main hobby. She's relying on me to bring games to her to say, hey, I think you'd be interested in this one. And you're right, you do have to be very cognizant of these are not going to say they're not board gamers, but this is not their prime hobby.
All right.
So you're having to make sure that what you're bringing to them is what they want to play, that hopefully you'll want to play too, that maybe your family will never get a chance to play. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to play Food Chain Magnate with Lola again because she didn't like it.
Yeah, I look at it as this is something that we're passionate about. They're not passionate about it. They are simply playing the game to support us and what we enjoy to do, the same way that I will sit down and watch an episode of Outlander with my wife because she really enjoys that show. I do not care one iota for the show. It could go off the air and it wouldn't affect my life. But because she enjoys it, I will on occasion watch it. And we kind of instituted a date night, and we would alternate week to week. Okay, will you pick what you think I want to do, and I'll pick what I think you want to do the next week. And even that kind of got into the rut of, okay, well, it's my week to pick, so I guess I'll play a game with you if that's what you want to do. She would pick, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll watch like 3 episodes of Dexter if I can stay awake through the first episode. So I think it's, again, we kind of got off on a little tangent about just our family, but I do think that we are so excited about introducing people to the hobby that sometimes we're kind of like a little puppy dog. We're just we just want to please them. We want to make them happy and show them our bring our bone to them and show them our bone and here and throw me the ball or whatever. But
we want them to have as much fun as we have.
We do.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably unrealistic. I mean, maybe you may introduce someone to a hobby because that's how the hobby gets new people. Someone introduces them to the hobby and they enjoy it, so they stick around. But I don't know if that's, how often that happens. I mean, is that you introduce 10 people to the hobby, to 2 stick around? And even then, I mean, they're just in the hobby to play the games. They're never going to immerse themselves in listening to podcasts or, watching videos or even reading a rule book, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So if you had to pick what do you think your go-to intro gateway game is? Like the first one that usually pops into your head, no matter who the person is, what is the one that you kind of default to?
Ticket to Ride. It's still, even though I have had some issues with teaching Ticket to Ride, and it's not so much teaching Ticket to Ride, it's just reminding people what they can do on their turn. Because it's funny that I was talking about my dad and my brother-in-law, both of them want to do more in their turn. Okay, like I want to build from point A to point B, so I need that card and that card. Now I want to play my card. No, you took cards this round. You have to wait until next round for you to do it. And it's just little things like that that you think, I understand why they're doing it because it makes sense that if you want to build, you take the cards, you play the cards, and you build. But no, it's in this game, the rules say you have to do, 1 to the 3 on each of your turns. You have to wait to your next turn to do the next thing you want to do. But yeah, Ticket to Ride, I still think is is a decent gateway game that if you have someone who is interested in gaming or have someone who's experienced the table, it is a good one to bring people into the hobby that you can show them games. I don't know whether if a family came to me and said, we want to play something up at the cottage. None of us have ever played games before. I don't know whether Ticket to Ride would be one I would suggest. It probably would be, but I would be a little leery that if no one is really gung ho to play games, you just want a time filler. I'm not sure whether that gateway game is the right one for you.
Yeah, that'd be a tough one. Now, do you ever find like, say with Ticket to Ride, do you find yourself if you're constantly having to correct them, do you find them either getting frustrated or not that you get frustrated, but do you eventually just kind of like back off and say, you know what, it doesn't matter? Because I found that with Brennan in say Lost Ruins of Arnak, he was constantly wanting to move his explorer, a second time after they were out on the game board. And I corrected him the first few times. And then after that, most of the times he remembers, sometimes he'd slip and he'd want to move it again. And I found myself just saying, you know what, I don't really care because I didn't want to make the experience unpleasant for him. Are you
I
or are you a hardcore? Nope, this is what the rule is. You're going to learn it the right way, and I don't care if you don't like it. This could be your last game for all I care.
I will tend to be a stickler for the rules. I will try and do it nicely I have spent games where I spend half the game reminding people about the rules. But I
Okay,
never
not
I
sure
never
it's half the game, but sure. I ask a lot of questions.
you do ask a lot. How many times do I have to tell you how the game ends?
Well, take the hint and end the damn game. I'm bored with it.
But I do try and make people play by the rules. As long as they're following the basic rules, I'm okay. If I know that they're making a bad play, I'm not going to stop them from doing it. Just do that. Like if you are building from point A to point B, or in the very last round, I have a brand new player. I can Ticket to Ride. I have a brand new player drawing cards as his last option for the game. I do remind them that, by the way, if there's something you have to keep at least one, and if you don't fulfill these, it's going to be negative points. I'm just reminding you about that. That type of thing. But yeah, if they are trying to do multiple things on a turn, I will stop them every time and say no.
You
No.
slap their hand, get a little spritzer bottle like for the cat. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm so not worried, but I don't want to scare them off. And I don't want to make I don't want to make Amy mad where she's like, fine, whatever, I'm just done or whatever. I mean, I think for you, I don't know, maybe it's just different. I'm a people pleaser, I guess.
But if you allow them to play it wrong the first time and they enjoy it and they come back,
She's not going to remember from one game to another. Give me a break. I don't play games that often. How often do you think she's going to play a game? She's not sitting down when I'm on the road, you know, honing her Ticket to Ride skills.
okay, we'll talk generalized then. I think in general, if people get off on the right foot on the games, then when they come back to the table, you're not having, it's like, okay, the first game, I let you do that, but that's not the real rules. I'd rather enforce the rules up front and not have to have that. I let you win the first time because you wanted to play all your cards. I just let you. It's like, well, no, you may have fun doing that, but
Well, I mean, I usually, if I let it go the first time and we play a second time, I usually preface the second game with, listen, I just thought you were stupid and you didn't understand what I was explaining the first game, but now I'm really going to reinforce this rule to you. And if you do it a second time, it's an automatic defeat.
oh, you're bringing back Combat Commander. Like, with you teaching me that, oh, that was painful.
Well, no, but you said you didn't play games as a child, and it makes a lot of sense now on some of your game skills that you weren't honing them as a child. I mean, how many times did I have to tell you, no, Graham? Again, you can't just group all of your fire together from across the board. Yeah.
Yeah, like we never played. Now we did play some games when I was a kid, but I never played Monopoly as a kid or Sorry or Candyland. I never played any of those. We played up at the cottage. It was giving us a cottage thing for us that we played. The only one I remember playing is Stop Thief, Electronic Stop Thief, and a game called Triominoes, which is like dominoes, just triangle pieces, as opposed to same idea of matching sides, whatever else. We had a crokinole board. I remember playing that and hurting my fingers on it, and then we played cards. That's what I remember games growing up.
Yeah. I mean, we played a lot of games, played a lot of card games, played a lot of board games. But, anyways, I thought this would be an interesting topic. I will ask you this. So, if you, last final question, if you had to pick a game that you would be the most excited to show off to a new gamer, knowing probably full well that they're not going to get it, they may not enjoy it, but you are just like, this is your, doesn't have to be your number one, but this is the game that you just would be like, maybe you do think it's the one true game out there. Do you know what game that would be?
See, for me, I always enjoy myself playing Trajan. My goal is to get anybody new in the hobby to be able to play Trajan with me because of how much I enjoy it. But so are you talking someone new to the hobby? Say, okay, I know you've played Ticket to Ride, but this is what you can aspire to.
Yeah, a new gamer.
I'd be worried that showing someone Trajan and saying, okay, well, this is a Moncala down here, and you go over here and you do this, 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 you go over here and you do this. I'm not sure how well that would go over, but it is Trajan's usually where I want to get people to, so I can play Trajan with them.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. See, when you were talking about it, I was thinking, so if you don't think that they would enjoy it, would you really be that excited about
No,
showing it off?
if I played, let's say I introduced them to Ticket to Ride, and then they said, oh, I heard about Splendor, or I heard about Azul, let's play that, and we play that, and they're happy at that level of game. I don't think I would say, oh, by the way, you're missing out on Trajan, because that's what they're happy playing with. I would try and find something that, in that case, I would probably try and find something that was like one step above that, and
Yeah.
see whether they'd be interested in that. That a game that I really enjoy, that's whatever, like a 2 to 2.5 that you were talking about. That maybe there's a lot of those games I also really enjoy. So I can get them to that level, and there's an awful lot of games in that range that I enjoy, and they never want to go any further. I'm happy with that as well. So
Right.
I think it depends on how they react to the games and how interested they are to trying more. Some people just say, that was fine. Next time I come, maybe we play another game. We've had some people that say, that was fun. What's next? And it's those people that I would go, here's Trajan that you may be able to, we'll play in a couple months when you played a couple more, but that's where I want to go to. If people say, maybe next time we get together, we can play something else, then those are the type of people that I would pick. Okay, let's play Ticket to Ride again. Let's play Splendor. Let's play Azul, one of the Azuls, probably Stained Glass, or let's play Sagrada. Let's just stick with those fun, quick, lighter games. And then maybe if you want more than that, introduce you to next level. But if you're happy with that level game, I'm happy to play those level games with you.
I'm trying to think. I can't remember the first game we played together. I know it was at Dice Tower Con. I can't remember what it was.
It wouldn't be Dice Tower, it would have been Grand Con.
No, it was Dice Tower Con.
Because I met you in Origins, and the next one after that was
Dice
Grand Con.
Tower Con.
Was it?
Yeah.
That
Because
was
it was.
that
Yes.
was that's when Nolan was with you, right?
Yep. Because Dice Tower Con is July, Grand Con is September.
Oh, okay.
Because I think Nolan and I were playing Run Fighter Die. You were teaching Scythe when I saw you from across the room and our eyes met. And I'm trying to think what the first game was we played. I don't think it was Grand Austria Hotel because I think that was at night. I don't remember. But had we finished that first game of whatever it was, and we kind of play a mix of games, I mean, from light to heavy. But let's say we get done playing that first game, and I would have said, that was fun. And then I would have pulled Exploding Kittens out of my book bag. Would your reaction have been, oh boy?
Look at the time.
Oh boy. or would it, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it is what it is, but I just wonder if we would have the same reaction if, if you had someone over your house and you're excited, you played Ticket to Ride and they pull out, something that even though you just said Munchkin, you understand it. I don't think you would be like, "Yay, let's play."
Uh, so we have had uh people come over and bring Exploding Kittens, and
Have
we
you
have
played
played
it?
it. Yeah, I have played it.
Oh my
It's
god. All right.
it's fine.
Episode 90 is the last one.
You know what? I enjoyed my play of it, but I think I've seen the entire game in the very first play, and I can see why people enjoy it because it is that simple. But just for me, it's like okay, for me it's a one and done game. I played it, I had fun playing it. I have no need to go back to it. Same thing with Munchkin. I have played Munchkin. Actually, I've played a couple Munchkins. They're funny the first time you go through them, but there's no real reason for me to come back beyond the humor from the cards. And humor is like anything. Once you've laughed at it once, the likelihood you're going to laugh at it the second time through is minimal. So I would have no problem if someone sat down at the table and said, "Hey, let's play whatever." I will give any game a shot once. If you want to come back every week with Exploding Kittens, I may have an issue with that. But if you want to bring a game and say it's Exploding Kittens, I'll say, fine, let's play Exploding Kittens.
Well, I know there's one game for sure that you would never introduce to a new player, and that is Food Chain Magnate, because God forbid you let anyone play that game that isn't an expert at it with you. That's why I've never been able to play the game, because you, sir, are an elitist.
I've seen how much you cry over games. It's like, I don't think I can sit through 2 hours of Dean going, "Oh, that first round, I knew I shouldn't have placed it there. Now my whole game is ruined."
In my defense, I'm usually under the weather a little bit, or I just want to play it. And I want to like have like a big sack of McDonald's burgers and just take the wrappers and throw them onto the table and get my ketchupy fingers all over your pieces, just to immerse ourselves in the theme.
There's a game you should buy so we can play your copy.
Oh, I'm not gonna spend that kind of money on a splotter. So, all right. Well, we went way, way, way off of the rails on that topic. But, anyways, I thought it was interesting because I'm sure some of our listeners are guilty of the same thing of being so excited about introducing people to the hobby that maybe they overshoot the mark a little bit. And hopefully that doesn't run people off. Hopefully, they if they didn't enjoy it, they give you a second chance or maybe tell you, hey, that was a little harder than I thought. But I'm not sure if people do that. I think people would be embarrassed if they don't get a game that you're saying, hey, this is a great introduction to the hobby, and then they struggle with it. I'm guessing most people aren't gonna say, you know what, can we dumb this down a little bit and try something else? They probably just will choose not to play again. But
Yeah. Yeah. And
anyways,
I think a little patience is warranted with bringing new people in. You have to remember that if they're not used to playing hobby games, that it may not be as easy as you think it is because you are in the hobby.
which is why I let them slide on the rules.
No, yeah, enforce the rules. Therefore, they play it right the next time.
Do you have like a little ruler you just smack their hand with?
Yeah, it's my my meter stick.
Your meters. All right. Well, if anyone wants to chime in, give their advice, maybe you have a go-to introduction game, gateway game, certainly feel free. You can share it with us. You can email us at boardgamebuffetpodcast@gmail.com or Twitter at boardgamechats, or you can find the Facebook page and Board Game Buffet and send us a message there as well.
I should also say that we check out the YouTube page. There's this video. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you can also check out the video version of this. The video version is always unedited. So sometimes Dean kind of tightens up the episode, removes some stuff. The whole thing is going to be on our YouTube page. We post some of our other videos on there, so you can subscribe to us there to see what's coming out. So that is YouTube. Just look for Board Game Buffet on there. And of course, we want to mention our Patreon again, that if you are interested in supporting us, I know not a lot of people can at this time, but if you do have, feeling generous and can support us in any way, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/bgbuffet. We have different reward tiers that kind of offer different things, early access to some episodes, and we do some episodes that are just for our Patreon backers. So check that out, patreon.com/bgbuffet.
All right. Excellent. I think it's going to wrap it up. This marks the 4-year anniversary of the podcast. So episode 100 should be, well, let's see. We're 10, so about 5 months away if we do two a month. So
which
yeah,
we have been doing for the last.
I guess we should probably do something for 100. Maybe do a giveaway or something, or
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We've got 10 episodes to figure it out, or 9 episodes, I guess, to figure it out. But as always, please take care of yourselves and your loved ones. See ya.
See ya.